Well, hey there, friends. So glad that you are here with me downstairs in the market kitchen. We are going to be working with asparagus today. We're going to just can ourselves up some asparagus so that we can use it in delicious recipes when it is out of season, because this is one of those things that just grow for such a short time in the early spring. And so all summer and all winter long, we can still enjoy the asparagus crop through the rest of the season. I had originally planned on making pickled asparagus and I couldn't find the right size jars, but I do have these 1.5 pint size jars that I've been wanting to use to make regular asparagus with. So that's what we're going to do today. Just pressure canning some asparagus. It's going to be fast and it's going to be simple. And I know that you can do this too. I'm getting the recipe actually from this book here, the Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving. Probably just about any of Ball's books are going to have the basic recipe on asparagus, or you can go to the USDA guide for home safe canning recipes. But on page 388, it shows the asparagus and shares some tips that I'll share with you. They suggest getting about 7 pounds. I have at least that much here today. And over here on the stovetop, I have my Presto canner is what we're going to use today. And I have it filled to the water line with a glug of vinegar, just because it just keeps your jars prettier. Oh, I almost forgot. I'm also going to need some canning salt and my debubbler tool. So now that we have that ready, all we have to do is start working on the asparagus. I have rinsed this really, really well. And now what I'm going to do is start taking the asparagus and making sure, like my tips, that the ends are nice and clear. And what I want to do is I'm going to take one asparagus and I'm going to cut it to the size that I need it to be. And that one is just about right. It could possibly be a little bit longer. So I might grab another one and do it slightly longer and see if this is where we want to be. Yep, right there at that 1-inch headspace, which is usually about right where this ring is. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and use that one. And then this one I'm going to have as my guide for how long I want my spears to be. So I'll grab a few at a time. And what I'm doing here is I'm just going to line up all the tips to the same size. And then I'm going to move these just off to the side for now. We don't have to get rid of them. And why I am putting these in tips down first, oh, that one might be a little too long. I'm doing that because this will make it for when we go to pull them out of the jar, the tips won't get damaged. So that's why I'm doing that like that today. Oh, and I need to grab my sample there. So again, I'll just grab a few of these, line them up to where I need them to be, and pack the jars. Now, you don't want to like super tightly pack them, but you don't want to loosely pack it either. These are going to be pressure canned because it is only safe to can these vegetables by water bath if I were to pickle them. And these are not going to be pickled today. So we will want to go with the err on safety here and make sure that we are doing things right. Now, how am I doing that? I'm lining them up. But some of these are still too long. Must be the way I'm packing them in. Huh. Well, let's try a few more. I think some of these tips maybe are not quite at the same length. There we go. So asparagus will grow in different thickness and different length according to how fresh or how new into the season you are. whether it be early spring or it's getting to be later spring. And so the more mature ones will be usually thicker, and those are really good to can with. But these little thin ones, they're not bad. They're going to get kind of soggy, I guess. It's going to be hard to can with something that tiny. I wouldn't suggest the super tiny ones. And let's see how we do here. See those? Now those are too short. Just can't win today, can we? Maybe I will put a few of these little skinny ones in there just to kind of fill in the gaps. Pretty well got this jar packed in pretty good. You want to get nice, firm, fresh asparagus. You're going to have a better end product if you do. What I've got here is within a week of picking. I have a nice asparagus patch in my backyard that I just love having. It's pretty well established. I've had it for several years. It was one of the first things I did when we moved here. Okay, so I'll bring it a little closer for you. And this is what it looks like. And just rinse and repeat. Okay, so what I did is I went through all of the stems and I kind of broke them off at where it starts to get a little woody. And I got 6 jars of the full spears. And then the parts that, like I said, were not tough, were still tender, I went ahead and I cut those up into, 1-inch cubes. And we'll go ahead and have those because they'll work really good for casseroles and soups and all kinds of different recipes that we don't necessarily want or need the full spear for. So we don't waste around here. So waste not, want not. Now I'm going to kind of clean up my station and we'll come back. So depending on which brand lids that you use, you may or may not need to warm them in water. It's all dependent on that particular company. Today I'm using Ball. They do not require that. They just have you wash them. And that is all the directions say that you have to do to prepare the lids. Next step is completely optional, and that's to add salt. But we like salt. It kind of helps keep color, and it just gives a little extra flavor. You can use about a ½ teaspoon is suggested per pint, up to a teaspoon per quart. So what I'm going to do is about ½ to 3/4 of a teaspoon per jar. It's completely just for flavor. You don't have to do this part. I'm just about going to finish this bag off. And if we haven't already discussed this, what I did here today is considered raw pack because I did not blanch these vegetables. I did that because I don't want to overcook these any more than we have to. If you are making these in pint-sized jars, you want to pressure can them for 30 minutes. Quart-sized jars is going to be 40 minutes. And you might think, okay, well, these pint and a half would be 35. And you would be wrong because whatever you do, you always go up to the next one. So these pint and a half jars will be processed for 40 minutes. And I don't want complete mush when these get done. So that's why I chose to raw pack. Plus, it's also really nice that I have cold canner and cold jars, and I don't have to worry about having a hot water for all my stuff. I can just use regular water to fill these up. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go over here to the sink and I'm going to fill these up to what I think is about the ½ inch headspace. And why I say think is because we are going to do what's called debubbling. We will do that next. So once I get these filled, I'll show you that. I kind of like to just move the water over the top of the salt to help kind of dissolve it a little bit. And I'm just using tepid water. I'm not using hot water. I'm not using cold water. Now what I have here is a debubbling tool. And what you want to do is you're going to go around and you're just going to randomly poke around our jars. And what this is going to do, and you might see some float up, is it is going to let any trapped bubbles out, because that we do not want. And then on this end, I actually have on the wand, it tells me where the 1 inch is. And that's where I want my liquid and my food to be. So I'm going to give them a good debubble just to make sure. So far, I seem to be pretty good. Now, because of these spears, I'm going to go, you know, in the middle, pick a couple places on the side, just to make sure I'm getting any trapped gas. Okay, so I had 2 of my jars that after I debubbled weren't quite up to the line. So I'll add a little bit more water. I'll go back. I'll debubble again and make sure I'm at the right spot. Oh, now I got a little too much. I think that's pretty good. Now we always want to make sure our rings are wiped clean. It probably isn't necessary to use the vinegar on this particular food item because it's not like greasy like meats and things. But out of habit, I always use vinegar. So I'm just going to take that, and it just makes sure that I didn't have a little tiny bit of asparagus on there, because you know at the heads of them, they kind of have like, well, I think in the book they called them scales actually. And sometimes they'll get stuck on there when you're shoving them down in there, or, you know, just anything that might possibly keep this from sealing. We want to make sure we're wiping off there. And it's going to give us one more chance to make sure that we don't have any chips or breaks in our jars. Now that that's done, get our clean lids and we put them on. And then these rings are clean, but they're not pretty. They're well loved. You'll notice as I put them on, I'm just twisting them until they stop. We do this because if you over tighten them, you can actually cause yourself troubles and the lids will not properly seal. You need to have them, see now that one's just not wanting to go on right, so we're not going to use it. You want to make sure that you get them on tight enough that it will keep the lid in place, and that's all you're doing. You are not, you know, cranking down on it. You want there to be, if any air needs to get out, you want it to be able to get out. So we do not tighten them down really tight. Normally at this point, I would tell you to go ahead and grab your tongs, but you don't need them today because we're cold packing, and we're going to move over now to the stovetop. And now I'm just going to start putting these jars into the canner. And again, the water, I have lines in the bottom of my canner where I know how far to fill them. I want you to follow the directions that are on your canner and make sure that you are properly filling the headspace or the airspace properly, the water line properly in your jar or in your canner. My goodness, words are hard today. So now I have all 8 of them fit into my canner. I'm going to put my lid on, which I may have backwards actually. I do. So, well, first, I want to make sure that my seal is good. It's still flexible. I want to be able to see if I can see through here or, you know, blow the whistle. That works. This jiggle will go up and down. Okay, so now I will seal it. And I personally like to turn it around. Make sure I got that tight now so that I can see the gauge. Although we won't necessarily use this gauge, I still like to see it as my second backup. So now I'm going to turn on a medium-high heat, and this is going to take a bit because this is a cold canner. And what we'll do is we're going to wait for air to start venting out of this. And when that happens, we'll set a timer for 10 minutes. So we've still got a little bit of work to do. So while we're waiting on this to do that, I can clean up my mess here in the kitchen. And you can see that we have a steady stream. Set the timer for 10 minutes. All right, so we've had our 10 minutes pass, and now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put on my weighted jiggler. Now, they will come with, oops, sorry. It will come with a weight, but I like having the jiggler. She's my little hula dancer, and she lets me know that everything's going the way it needs to go while I'm in the other room working on other projects. And it comes with 2 extra 5-pound weights. It's 5 pounds itself. And then you add 1 5-pound weight to get to 10 pounds is where I need to be. So I'll leave this one off the side and I'll just stick that right on there. And then what's going to happen next is this is going to build pressure. And then when it gets to the 10-pound weight of pressure that it needs to be at, it'll start, making a little noise and doing the little jiggle. And then that's when we set the timer for processing. Can you hear that? That's the jiggle, jiggle, hula, hula. That's what we need to hear. That's it. So we've, as our backup, we can see we're at 10 pounds pressure. We're going to let this dance away for 40 minutes. Okay, now all we do is shut it off and leave it be. I'm going to go do evening chores, and I'll see you afterwards, and we will unveil what is in the canner. Okay, it was probably like an hour and a half to get chores done. So this is what we need to do now. We'll take this off, find that extra 5 pounds, put it with it so we don't lose it, open up our lid, and just put it to the side. Let it set for 10 to 15 minutes. Now that our 10 minutes is up, I'll take the lid off and I'll peek inside. It looks like the water's a little green, so we may have had some siphoning, but here they are, our asparagus spears. Aren't they pretty? I'm so excited to have this on my shelf. I've been growing asparagus for probably close to a decade now, and I have never canned asparagus before. And here are our little bits and pieces. They're floating a little, but not bad. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take these all out, and then I am going to let them cool overnight. I'm not going to mess with them. And then tomorrow I will make sure that they did seal. Any that didn't seal, I will need to make sure to get in the refrigerator right away and plan to use them. And the ones that are sealed, which I'm hoping, it looks like to me that they all 8 did seal. And so that's really good. And what I'll do is I'll wait, and once they're cooled, I'll wash them with hot soapy water, and then I will label them, and then I will put them on my pantry shelf to use later. The water was definitely a little green, but it looks like what happened is there must have been so much juice in the vegetables, because that can happen sometimes, that it came out. And that's why you don't want your lids on too tight, because it needs to expel if necessary. So even though we had a little siphoning, it looks like the headspace and everything stayed where it needed to be. So I'm thrilled about that. They look like they lost a little bit of color, but it reminds me of like green beans would be. Let's take a closer look. So here they are. Thank you so much for coming along with me again today in the kitchen while we canned up some asparagus. Let me know down below. Do you like asparagus? What's your favorite dish to make with them? We'll see you later, friends.